Today we're going to take a look at President Roosevelt's domestic policy. So this is Progressivism and Republican Roosevelt, chapter 28 in American Pageant, if you're looking at that. And what we see here is we talked about his foreign policy, which was in large part the expansion of America's influence across the world. What we're going to look at today is his belief in a more what he's going to call a square deal, but what he is going to view as private industry that's gone too far and has had a negative impact on society and the actual environment itself. So let's just dig right in. So the text gives this statement that and it's David Kennedy is the historian who wrote the textbook that I'm referring to, says progressivism was less a minority movement than a dominant majority mood. And so it's really interesting when you look at progressivism because a lot of movements start out with a small group of people pushing for something extreme, and over time, more and more people get a part of it. But you're going to look in the early 1900s and see that both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party would be largely described as progressive. So it really speaks to an interesting dynamic where these were ideas that a lot of people agreed with, and a few, you go back and you've had this laissez-faire time, which just simply means to leave alone. Okay, you've had unbridled free market capitalism in a large respect. That's what you refer to as the Gilded Age, and we've had some industry grow really large and benefit a lot of people. We've also seen a lot of wealthy people take advantage of some people as well. So when you look at all of that, you see a situation where there's a lot of frustration. You have a lot of writers, you have a lot of artists that really speak to that and really try to show you how a lot of Americans are living in the big cities and how things are not working well for them. So you're going to see people that they're going to refer to as muckrakers. They're going to take the trash or the lower parts of society and bring it to the forefront. So muck was like trash and they raked it up. So they were showing you all of these bad parts of society that people attempted to cover up. You're actually going to have some people who we would consider socialist in the United States that are pushing for what we see going on in Europe to happen in America. But in large part, a lot of it is a push for more democracy. And by democracy, what I mean is more elections, more power directly to the people. So what is that going to look like? So the second discussion question asks about the progressive movement and what it accomplished. You're going to see things like initiatives, referendums, and recalls. So those are huge. Those are ways for voters to directly impact by getting things on the ballot or by recalling a politician before their term is actually up. That those are going to take place. A huge contribution is going to be the 17th Amendment. So until this point, your senators were actually appointed by your state legislator. The 17th Amendment allows your senators to be elected by a popular vote of the people. So this obviously changes that dynamic quite a bit, where all of your senators are actually elected on a popular vote rather than the system with which that kind of retained more to a state power system that your state legislators had a significant role in. And so you're going to see the growth of settlement houses. You're going to see women that are going to be pushing for the right to vote. They're going to be pushing for poor minority individuals to be taken care of in homes. And you're going to see some Supreme Court cases that are going to limit how long a work day is and what working conditions are like. You're also going to see, again, I quote here from the text in discussion question 3, that Teddy Roosevelt sought to tame unbridled capitalism without fundamentally altering the American economic system. So, again, you're going to hear Roosevelt say things like square deal. And by square deal, in large part what he meant by that was a deal in which all sides are treated fairly, that the workers, that the company, that the consumers are all treated fairly. So you're going to see things that go on during his administration, like the Meat Inspection Act, like the Pure Food and Drug Act, where if you say that a food is something, it has to actually be that. If you're going to have a food industry, you're going to have to be open to inspections and make sure the food is safe and sanitary. And so these were things that he thought were square in the terminology that was used back then. That would have been, a square deal, meaning something that's appropriate for both sides. Okay. And so he thought like this was an in the middle compromise, that he wasn't being overly one way or the other, because he did embrace capitalism. He just felt like there needed to be regulation, and that America had gone too far to the unregulation laissez-faire terms, and he was bringing them back to a more compromising position in that regard. So Roosevelt goes through his presidency, very, very popular, very much a believer in the strong executive. He really is going to be our first president that's really going to believe that the executive, that the president holds this unique power that needs to be constantly out in front of not only foreign policy, which a lot of people believe, but domestic policy, that he should be the driver. So it's a very powerful executive branch under Teddy Roosevelt, and you're going to see him talk about that a lot. That he doesn't, there's a lot of quotes he has about he doesn't really care what the other branches think. That he's the only one that's elected by all Americans, he's the only position that has that kind of authority. It's kind of Andrew Jackson-esque, right? You can kind of make those comparisons if you want. So, but he does have a panic in 1907, economic panic. So when he leaves in 1908, which by the way, he says he's not going to run again. So he's got to find a successor, and so he brings in Taft. And now Taft is a progressive. Taft does claim to be a supporter of a lot of the things um, that Roosevelt had been doing, but over time, Taft backs down on conservationism. Roosevelt was big on conserving, the creation of Yellowstone Park, the creation of all of these different areas that were going to be left alone. Um, Taft falls back on that. Taft raises tariffs. There's some other issues as well, and it really, really frustrates Roosevelt and frustrates some other Republicans as well. So there's this split towards the end of uh, Taft's first term. And so, as people are frustrated with Taft, they begin to ask Roosevelt if he would be willing to run again. And of course, Roosevelt kind of now, makes a lot of comments about regretting getting out when he did, decides he's going to jump back in and challenge Taft for the Republican nomination. So they go all the way to, I believe it was in Chicago it was in Chicago that year, but the Republican nomination, who's going to get it? They have the big convention there, and Roosevelt falls short. So Taft will be the Republican nominee. For for most people, that would be it, right? That would, wanted to run again. Their party that wanted to run again. That's all. Well, not Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt decides he is going to run in a new party, the Progressive Party. So we'll save that for next chapter. So Roosevelt's not going to be out of this yet, but this whole discussion about Taft and Roosevelt really plays out as how interesting this time was. So they're arguing, and their frustration with Taft was he wasn't progressive enough. So you have two Republicans, and they are kind of vying for who's the more progressive, while the Democratic Party was really the party that was traditionally seen as progressive. So you have both parties really accepting that there needs to be major changes made to the American form of government. So this is really why you see this as the progressive era. We'll catch up with what happens with the third party run of Roosevelt in the next chapter.